Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.7.3, where we are trying to take our next small step, playing the Realism Overhaul RP-1 career mode. And so here we just have a lovely shot of the Kerbal, not the Kerbal Space Center, the Kennedy Space Center as we get back into it. So I think I'll just give you kind of a little bit of a status report of where we are and what we are up to. So we are working on building an Araby RTV N-2, which is our three-stage sounding rocket, which we are using to complete the biological sample return capsules. Those are the little ones that go straight up, come back down, return some science. We also have an R2, which is based on a Russian IRBM, which is going to be sending out a film capsule somewhere far off into this distance here, probably about 800 kilometers away, and then returning that film canister for science and also contract rewards. We are working on sounding rockets for now, and we are trying to increase our capabilities. And basically, we're using that as a way to kind of spend our time as we finish our research upgrades. We have a lot to get done here, so we're, just a lot to get done here. So we're working on that. As we're getting our science done, we are getting money by doing these sounding rocket contracts, and it's also teaching us a lot about spin stabilization, pushing large payloads downrange, and that sort of thing. All right, and so the next thing that I think we should work on is stealing more aircraft from the RP-1 Discord. So this is, I believe it's Neff's once again. Yes, indeed. This is another design by Neff. I stole my first plane from him, and I'm stealing this one as well. So this is going to be our X-1 space plane analog. So the X-1 was one of the first space planes. It was the US design, and it was the plane that broke the sound barrier. Yes, so this plane was actually built about 5 years before the start of the RP-1 career, which starts in 1950. So this is a little bit of an old tech thing, but does require a tech upgrade for us. And this is not an exact analog. This is just a gamey design that I think will work, and I thought looked really cool, because I could not have built something like this, I don't think. But anyways, yeah, the Bell X-1, which this is going to be standing in for in our historical career playthrough, was the first crewed airplane to exceed the speed of sound in level flight. So the idea is we're going to use the airdrop feature to drop this plane here up high already and going at decent speed, so we don't have to take off or anything like that, and then we are going to use the jet to accelerate past the speed of sound, and then we are going to hopefully land it and probably need to use this parachute. So good luck to me on that one. So I basically just grabbed this from the Discord and loaded it in, and then I had to play with the color scheme because these textures just didn't load properly. I'm not sure if I just have something set up incorrectly. And I slapped on a new cockpit and a new engine to make sure that everything loaded, because when I loaded this in, let's go ahead and save this. When I loaded it in, you see it says unknown part modules, and it gave me all this stuff, and I wasn't sure what that all meant, so I made sure to just slap back on the things that are important, and hopefully everything will work out just fine, and yeah, we'll see about that. Tricky thing is I can't really test this off of the pad, so we are going to have the first time I build this, we are going to have a simulated launch, and I'll talk about that when I get to it, but this is going to take 220 days, so this is something that I just kind of wanted to get going on the side. So let's go ahead and open this up and do some tooling first, because I do think we are going to be launching this a couple times. So total vessel cost of parts are tooled is about half of what it is now, but it's going to cost me $6,400 to do it, and I think that sounds totally fair, because that brings me down to 150 days, down from 220 or so. So let's go ahead and get this going. So we are going to set that up to launch. So that is now in our launch queue, and hopefully we'll be able to launch this a couple times after fueling it back up. One more thing we need to do before we move on from this is we want to make sure everybody is trained on using the X1 cockpit. And you'll see that they have proficiency from the 625 Mbani from our messing with that before, but that is not something that we have now. See, X1 is its own thing. So let's go ahead and get everybody proficiency in the X1 cockpit. Now, I don't see any reason why not to get everybody rolling on that. And that'll take 45 days, but that'll last them forever. So they'll be trained on it and able to use it, and I can just kind of mix and match with mission training as we go. So yeah, that's that. We're going to launch this from the air, and we'll see how it goes. Should be terrifying. All right, so here we are on the pad with our RTV-N-2, which is just our Aerobee rocket stacked on top of itself with a sounding rocket payload. All right, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, launch, and that's the end of that kick stage, and we are on our way. Fantastic. Yeah, so as we go, this is a pretty simple design that should, I hope, work just fine as far as getting us a little bit of science and also accomplishing our next biological sample return contract. So yeah, I just want to say that, oops, smash. It is now 1952. We are 2 months in, so it's late February 1952. We are a little bit slow as far as like a pure masterclass of getting through the sounding rocket phase might take. Wait 2 seconds until stage, and the rocket has lit. Fantastic, so this should hopefully work. But yeah, so we're going relatively slow as far as some of the guides will tell you. The guide that I'm kind of loosely basing this playthrough on has you basically getting orbital by the time that you get to this year, like late 1952 is I think when they were going orbital. And we're not going to get that. We're going to kind of mess around a little bit in this phase, which I think is fine. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying playing around with these different types of rockets and going through the historical progression a little bit. So yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying that too. Let me know what you think, but we should be just about cut off with this one, so here we go. We are putting just about 80 units of payload into a trajectory that has an apoapsis of 212 kilometers, which is great. Like that's pretty fantastic. That puts us up, I think, let's see, where's our contract at low space biological? Yeah, we only needed to get to 120 with this much payload, so this should be fantastic, and hopefully with the next contract we should be able to use the exact same rocket, the exact same profile, and just knock that one out. Very cool. All right, so let's grab this space biological sample as we get up to 180 kilometers. And that is all we're going to need this this booster for, so we can go ahead and decouple that and arm our parachute. And as we re-enter the atmosphere, I see there's no more science to be gained, so let's just go ahead and zip on forward to see if this lands safely. All right, so it looks like we are coming down just fine, no issues whatsoever. This thing is going to touch down and get us that science from the biological capsule and also complete that contract. Boom, one more down. All right, and as we return to the Space Center, just a couple administrative things. So we got 7.7 science. It gives us 15 total, which is pretty nice. I think we might be able to do something with that. But first, let's just take a look at what the next contracts are going to be. So this is a series of 3 contracts, of which 2 have been completed. So that means this is the 3rd of 3 contracts of that biological sample return type. And it wants us to get to 140 kilometers with 115 units of payload, which I'm willing to bet our previous design is going to be able to handle just fine. But before we get to that one, let's do a low space film return, which... Yep, we already have that one in development. So we just need to make sure that we do 115 units of payload on our edited version of the RTV-N-2, and then we will be able to get that moving. All right, so as I mentioned, we are looking for 115 units of payload. So let's go ahead and remove these tanks. And yeah, this is as big as this one gets, so we actually are going to need to increase the size. All right, looks like a length of 1.2 meters is going to be what we need, and that's actually pretty darn similar to what we already have down on this end. Similar enough that it counts as tooled. So when you're doing payload tanks like this, I find that it's not actually necessary to tool them always. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's move it down to 1.1 meters, and then there's the tool tank button. This would cost 216 funds to tool, which, you know, is not actually a big deal. But if it was a larger amount, you might still not want to do it, because, take a look here. The cost to tool was 216 funds, okay? So that's 216 funds. You see that here. This planner works just fine. Untooled, this costs 19 funds. All right, so that means that this adds an extra 19 funds as opposed to the 1 fund it would cost if we tooled this tank. So tooling that would reduce the cost of this rocket by 18 funds, bring it down closer to this 250 number that we see here, from the 270 that we see here. So you can kind of do that math and see that that extra money does cost us extra time a little bit, because that translates into build points. However, it's not that big of a deal, especially if we're only going to use that tank size once to be whatever the size of this payload is, and then we're going to throw it away. If it's something we're going to use more than once, that's something that we would definitely want to tool and reuse. So for future items that are future rockets that are going to be using this type of payload, like actually have to have like a dedicated tank for payloads, which I think there's some things like ComSat contracts, things like that. So if we're dealing with that, we want to make something standardized that we use over and over, but these are sounding rockets, and I'm planning on throwing them away just as fast as I possibly can. So I think this is going to work for what we have for now. Although I am curious how much it would reduce the cost. So just for argument's sake, let's go ahead and do that. 255 funds brings us down from 79 days to 77 days. So it does shave 2 days off of our total time, which is a helpful thing. But like I said, not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things when we're only going to be making maybe 1 or 2 more of these rockets. So anyways, yeah, we have an R2 still building for the film contract, and we are still going to be alternating. This has the 100, this is not 115. I thought that oh, that's right. I reduced the size for argument's sake, and then I forgot to actually update it again. So there we go, 119, that's more than the 115 that the other one had, or that the contract specifies. And I think that we've only lost about 100 or so meters per second of delta V off of our total. So I think that this should work for the contract. So we are going to go ahead and save this, and I am going to go ahead and add it to the build queue to launch. Alright, so one last thing for us to deal with on the administrative front is the fact that we have money again. Huzzah! So we're at 37,000 funds, which means that we have enough money to drop a point into, I'm thinking, R&D, because what we really want is for our technology to be moving a bit faster. That's kind of where we're bottlenecked right now. That's why we're kind of I wouldn't say wasting time, but that's why we're spending time on these sounding rocket contracts, is because we're waiting for these to all get finished. So, yeah, so we've got that going. That leaves us a little bit of money left over to continue actually building things. Yeah, so I guess this part is going to get a little bit repetitive, but we can kind of speed that up a bit with some rush building. So we'll do 1 or 2... 3, yeah, that seems good. All right, so taking a look at our technology path, we've got research heading up towards the satellite era science, which is very good. But we also have available to us now the satellite era material science node, which is very, very exciting, because that is going to give us Tank 3, which if Tank 2 is a massive improvement over the over the capabilities of Tank 1, then Tank 3 is even better. So that is going to be, I think, is Tank 3 it? Like, I'm kind of looking through. Okay, no, there is a Tank 4. All right. Yeah, so Tank 4, I guess, is about as good as it gets in materials science. But Tank 3 is something we get fairly early on, and is something that is going to last us for a very long time. And so that is what we're going to be building the vast majority of our stuff out of for the foreseeable future. So we want to get to that as soon as we possibly can. But just for symmetry's sake, I think I'm going to grab the this basic rocketry node, which is going to give us a couple upgrades to our mainstay rockets, including the XLR-11, which is what our X-1 spaceplane is built on. So we'll have that, and that's an RD-100 upgrade as well, and then some other lovely things that we'll get to use. New models for us to play with. Very exciting stuff. But yeah, so we've got basic rocketry research that costs us 3 points, and then we are going to put another 10 points into satellite era materials science, and that is going to take us straight on to the next node, which is 1956 to 1957 orbital rocketry. Very cool. That's where this really opens up. Look at all this stuff. Oh my goodness. There's so many different rockets, and things are going to actually become a little bit more American at that point, because we are going to have access to a lot of the early American rocket engines, like the things that powered the Atlas and the things that powered the Titan, or at least the precursors to those rockets, which is awesome, and I'm really excited to get to play with those. But as you can see, that is years away right now. So my plan right now is to continue doing these sounding rocket contracts and just continue up the tree as we are going. I think we have a good plan as far as the order of things, but what we need to be doing is really pumping points into R&D so that we can get this moving a little bit faster, because now we are putting out rockets at a decent pace. I would still like to get a couple more points in, because we only have 2 right now, which is not fantastic. But yeah, more and more, better and better, onward and upward. So it looks like the next thing on the menu here is the Redbird B, which is that spaceplane that we built, which is going to be done in 72 days, but there's going to be a little bit of extra time after that to prepare it for air launch, which is an operation similar to rolling out a rocket to the launch pad from the VAB. So we are going to be dealing with that. But in the meantime, we can start doing some mission training for the X-1. So let's go ahead and get Dmitry and Rostislav ready to go on that. That's going to take 11 days for them to finish, and then in 11 more days, I'll swap in Boris and Sally. There we go. So those 2 are now going to go get their class on X-1 mission training. And then that way, I can just take whoever. Alright, so I am not 100% sure if this is a bug or not, but looking back at this node, you'll see that I haven't actually researched this air launch thing. Like, it still has this purchase entry cost, but that doesn't actually stop me from using it. So the way that works is here, we just have a new button that says prepare for air launch. It's going to take 11 days. Just click on that and it just moves to the carrier, and then there's just some extra time. But we are going to finish our early rocketry technology before that. All right, early rocketry is just engine upgrades. So it looks like we've got the AJ1027 configuration for the Aerobee, which I am super stoked about. That is an upgrade to the Aerobee engine that brings it into... I almost said modern, but that's not quite right. But it brings it into the level of performance that will carry us for a really long time. And a lot of sounding rockets were launched using this engine in real life. We'll also be able to use HTP in our RCS engines, high test peroxide. And that's exciting, I'm sure. We haven't used an RCS engine before. Do I even have an RCS? I'm sure I have some available to me, but it's just not something that I've been prioritizing at all. We're able to upgrade the RD-101 to the RD-102, And also there's an upgraded XLR-11, which, as I mentioned before, is what we're using on our space plane. So, yeah, pretty exciting engine upgrades that are going to cost us a little bit of additional funds when we use them. But we don't have any need to make these upgrades quite yet, so we are just going to leave that there. All right, so here we are with the Redbird B ready to launch, ready to air launch even. And so I am going to declare this ahead of time a simulation because it's very hard to actually simulate the air launch feature. There's no way to do it as far as I know. The way that the RP-1 folks recommend it is that you just go in and you literally fly up to whatever altitude and distance that you're looking for, and then like use cheats to keep your fuel at maximum as you get to where you want to be, and then turn it off. And that seems silly when I can just quick save and quick load. And so therefore I am going to call this a simulation, so we do not get to keep any progress. All right, and here it is. It has launched our, oh dear, why is activate the engine? Oh no. Feed pressure too low. I thought that I had fixed the I thought that I'd fixed that so that these were high pressure tanks, but I clearly did not. So yeah, this is not going to launch at all. Yeah, so I'm glad that I declared this a simulation, so we are just going to go ahead and revert that back to the hangar. Alright, well that's incredibly annoying, so let's go ahead and unmount that. That's going to take another 11 days, roll back, and then roll forward. And you know what I think I'm going to do is I am going to just test this on my own, make sure that that works out at least half decently, and then I'll do the live flight with you guys so that you don't have to watch me faff around with this silliness. Alright, here we are on the pad with Demetria Daxon with the maiden flight of the Redbird B. And one thing to keep in mind is that I completely forgot to keep in mind at all the test flight characteristics. So this engine might explode, which would be an interesting result, I suppose, in this test. But as you can see, I've turned on the MacLeod aircraft autopilot, which I find to be almost entirely necessary. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put the altitude hold on 10,000 feet. So what this is doing right now is, with this autopilot engaged, I have altitude hold with a vertical speed limit of 20 meters per second, which means it's trying to raise the altitude to 10,000 meters with a speed limit of 20 meters per second. So don't go vertically more than 20 meters per second, which means it won't like pitch up to like 90 degrees straight up and down, which I have tested and will throw this thing into a flat spin. This thing does not gain altitude super well, and I've also got the roll hold on there, which will keep it from just tilting in either direction. So my plan here is not to match the X1's actual flight, the actual flight of the X1, because this is not an X1. This is a different sort of ship. This is just what I picked up off of the RP-1 Discord, because Neff is a genius aircraft designer. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get to about 10,000 meters if I can. And then I'm going to try to level out my flight, and then from there I'm going to try to break the sound barrier, which if we break open this and take a look at what the actual contract is, that means we need to go more than 343 meters per second for 30 seconds and then get home safely. So that's a tough challenge. This is going to be a really tough challenge, and I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to get this done on this flight. But here's hoping as far as that's concerned. So we are just rising up now, and we're still slowly rising. So yeah, hold tight. All right, we're still pushing along. This mean time between failures timer is ticking down, which is terrifying me. So I am just going to go ahead and, how do I do this best? Let's say 9,000 meters. Let's try to level out this flight and see if we can't accomplish it right here, right now, because I'm really worried that this engine's going to explode and we're not going to be able to accomplish this. But we need to get to 343 meters per second. That's as fast as we need to go. So maybe if we point downwards just a little bit. Here, let's just try to take control of this manually. We're going to go into a bit of a dive, disengage the autopilot, because that sounds like a great idea. All right, we're doing it. 26 seconds. 24, 23. All right, this is terrifying. This might... Okay, we're going too fast. Oh my god, the aerodynamic stresses. If I try to do anything to this vessel right now, it will just tear itself to shreds. Oh my gosh. 5 more seconds. Alright, consider that broken, their speed barrier. Speed barrier. Consider yourself broken, sound barrier. Alright, but now we need to slowly, gently pull up, because this vessel uses early spaceplane wings, not, you know, the ones that are designed to break the sound barrier. And okay, there we go. And reignite that engine. Yes, all right. Oh, and the engine's dead. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to try to glide in very nicely. We are not too far from the Space Center, but I really don't think we're going to make it. So we're just going to try to cut as much speed as we can, and hopefully the parachute on this is going to be able to save us. But yeah, we're just we're coasting in nicely. This thing stalls at a pretty high speed, so I don't have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to glide this thing all the way in with only 400 or so meters of clearance. But yeah, overall, this was an incredibly successful flight. Hopefully this doesn't kill poor Dimitri as we get close to the ground here. So let's go ahead and flare this and then hit that parachute. And there we go. That looks good. I don't like... Okay, yeah. Maybe good? Oh my gosh. This is stressing me out. Okay. 40 meters. 30 meters. We're moving at 8 meters per second. This is a pretty hefty hit. That was a deafening sploosh that... All the particle effects actually lagged my computer for a second there. But there we go. Successful flight of our Redbird B. Thanks to Neff for that design. Alright, so that nailed us 2 contracts. We got the crewed speed record of 350 meters per second. Very, very nice. I feel like there should probably have been more, but, you know, what do I know? And then boom! Congratulations, you have broken the sound barrier. And you'll see that for what we spent on this and the tooling for this vessel was actually really quite worthwhile getting this contract done now while I'm working on these sounding rockets. So that gives us a lot of flexibility for how we move forward. All right, so I think that is just about going to do it for us today. I just want to talk a little bit about the X-1 spaceplane that this whole, that the Redbird was based on. And yeah, that was flown by Chuck Yeager initially, at least the one that I'm showing this image of here, that was used to initially break the sound barrier. And it was kind of the foundation of America's spaceplane program. So we'll be playing a little bit more with that, and maybe I'll even design my own one of these days and see how terribly that goes compared to just grabbing things off the Discord. But yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. But anyways, yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, please let me know, like, subscribe, all that sort of thing, and let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.